Welcome to another and nothing but the truth. I like these episodes because, to my best effort, I try to explain situations in learning and approaching our instrument on the bass and that benefit people. And today, I am really, really excited to invite somebody who plays a style and may have gotten famous from this style that people seem to have felt that I don't like. Um, I never had a negative thought about slapping on a bass because it's a popular and a usable technique. I just objected to the teaching of it. And these are things that I've explained before. But let me introduce everybody to somebody that I know you all know is a gentleman who goes by the name of Freekbass. So, Freekbass, I want to thank you very, very much for doing this little episode with me, and I'm glad that you're here, buddy.
I'm very honored to be here. Looking forward to talking everything and all things bass and beyond with you, Jeff. And again, it's an honor for me to be here today. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Well, I'll begin here. Um, there are many talented bass players online sharing their musical wares and getting a good attention from it. But what brought me particularly to the attention of you was something that you shared in an interview or in a video, I should say, one of yours,
Yeah.
referring to slap, where you said that slap didn't have to be taught. Am I quoting you right?
Well, the video started off like as I said, I don't like slap bass. And everybody was like, they know the way I play. They were like, heads were spinning. It was the internet. You know, the internet is. It was like people like immediately. Um, what I meant by that was first off, I've never been very I don't like that term. I don't like slap. Like whenever I think of that technique that we're talking about, I like thumping and plucking. I know it's all semantics. I get that. But whether it be Larry Graham or Lewis Johnson from the Brothers Johnson or Bootsy, of course, like to me, like those guys, they it was a musical, it wasn't like when Larry Graham who invented the style. I don't think it wasn't about so much the acrobatics of it. It was just more of like, how can this benefit the song more? Like by me doing this particular type of technique. And part of that was with him, as you know, was he was playing, at a church with his mom, and they didn't have a drummer, so he was trying to replicate that sound at the same time. Then, of course, getting into Sly and the Family Stone, it was a different thing. And it feels like a lot of times when I think of the word slap bass, a lot of times and again, I got in trouble on this in the video, and you came to my defense in a way, which was great. But it's like, you go to like the NAM show or whatever, and it's a lot of clackety, 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 clack, but it's like you don't hear the note a lot of the times. It seems like it's more about the acrobatics than the notes. So that's that's kind of, at least in my mind, the difference I think between slap bass and thumping and plucking. Yes, I know it's semantic. Yes, it's kind of, it looks similar when you're visually looking at it, but to me it's kind of almost just a little bit of a different mindset in terms of creating the sound that you do by doing that technique, I guess.
Yeah, that technique has value. And the interesting thing about slap to me is that it is such a, I would say, specific approach that to do it differently entails having a really clear vision about that. Do you have a real clear vision when you play slap bass lines like that you are trying to emulate a thought or idea of music in you? Or do you allow the hands to sort of lead the way? What's your process when you slap? I'm curious about that.
That's a very interesting question when it's phrased that way. I mean, it's always, again, it's like, one of the things I do when I practice and have always practiced that technique, and I tell this to some of my students too, is do that technique, but don't play a bass line you would typically think as a quote unquote slap bass line. In other words, don't just learn like necessarily like a Red Hot Chili Peppers lick, but maybe learn some, Bach cello concerto, or just doing scales, or doing something, playing a Black Sabbath song or something that you wouldn't normally think. Because again, then it becomes, again, goes back to becoming about, yeah, you're doing this certain technique, but it's about the note, and it's not about like how my hands are looking for people when they're watching me do it or whatever. So I always try to lean into the note first. And for me, it's just it's just my voice. Like when I do it now, like a lot of times I'm not even, I'm also a part of it's my technique is my thumb is, I used to use a pick sometimes for more kind of heavier stuff. And I didn't want to like rely on having to hold on to a pick so I could go to other styles. So I started using my thumb, almost like it wasn't even a funk thing. It was just more like kind of trying to just create certain sounds with my thumb, being like what a lot of people now know as double thumb technique. But I didn't even know who Victor Wooten was when I was starting to create like this whole thing for myself. And so yeah, so it's just more about, again, I always, and it sounds kind of lofty and pretentious, and I don't mean it this way, but it's really, I let the music dictates what I'm doing here. It's not like about like, hey, let me show you how cool I look by going like this. You know what I mean? Type thing, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Well, yours is an interesting suggestion because I've had some disagreements with people online where people said that rhythm should be taught first, meaning that in the learning of our instrument, that the rhythms are actually separated from the note so that the rhythm is learned whereby the note is added to it. And I argue back that music is rhythm and pitch, that in the combining of a note in a rhythmic form, both areas is solved, and that the separation of the two areas is a recent addition in bass education that I feel has negatively impacted on people. So when you are practicing or learning a bass line, are you doing it as a pitch oriented thing where your physical plucking then is added to ba da da do 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 or some such a thing? Uh, do you have a formula for that? You may even have answered it earlier, but I'm curious about this because I know nothing about the thinking or little about the thinking that people do, except that the gestures seem to justify the style. When you say that slap is not a term you like, are you a pitch? How do you think of pitches and then orient your technique with it?
Again, great question. I mean, I definitely think, and I mean, of course, rhythm is obviously always going through your head too, as well. I mean, I started off as a drummer, so like I'm always, yeah. So rhythm's obviously up there as a forefront for me a lot too, as well. But in terms of, you know, just like, if you pick up your bass, I would guess you pick it up, and whatever bass line you make, you probably play it like this, right? With your fingers. It's just like what you've always done. It's your thing. It's what you do. That's kind of how I am with this. It's like it's not like I'm not thinking, hey, I'm going to do the slap technique now. To me, it's no different when James Jamerson was using more his thumb to, play bass lines. And I'm not comparing myself to someone like him because he's obviously a legend, but I'm saying like it's just kind of my go-to, not go-to and like, hey, I'm gonna make everything I play funky. It's just more just like that's just kind of my zone, So I still do a lot of finger stuff too as well, but it's just like that's just yes, I do still, and, I still do quite a bit of that, but, like, I mean, I can thump. I mean, I bet, I mean, we could always do, the blind taste test thing, but I'd be willing to bet I could, like, thump a lot of things and you wouldn't even know I'm thumping it, or thumping and plucking it or slapping it or whatever. It's just kind of like, no, yeah, it's just kind of, it's not all like, "Ticka, ticka, ticka, ticka," that's not always, like, super rhythmic. It's just it depends on obviously what part of the thumb I hit on, like what if I'm going up and down. There's so many elements to it. It's just kind of more. It's more about my groove and my musicality and how I can make that note resonate in the best way. I think that's why we all, whether you're a pick player, you're a finger player, it's about letting the note resonate in the way that it can.
I agree, and I'm most definitely an advocate for the seeking of a note, because music to me is harmony. I agree, it's harmony, melody, and rhythm, but the essential element that ties everybody together in every style, and I feel has always done this, is that no matter what one style is, there's a G major chord in there somewhere. There's an A
Right.
minor, there's an
Right.
E major, there's an F, you know. And so in that regard of harmony, the I think the element that is most necessary to share with people is that to pursue the note is to pursue the literal word music itself. And I'm curious if you might see it that way, even in the various techniques that you use, that the note may
Ye
come first.
Yes, for sure. And one thing I think it might be kind of, that might kind of bridge the gap in terms of explanation too, is so when I was, a lot of stuff when I'm, everybody obviously learns other influences, whether you're listening to a Charlie Parker tune or you're listening to like a Jack Bruce song, whatever. We're all learning other people's bass lines to kind of influence our own style. And for me, um, I would when I was a hugely influenced by James Brown. A big part of that is from being in Cincinnati, Ohio, which is King. I don't know if your viewers know this, but almost every single James Brown hit was recorded here in Cincinnati, where I live, because King Records was here. So funk in Cincinnati, whether it be James Brown, then of course Next Generation, you had Bootsy, and there's a group in the '80s called Midnight Star. It just went on and on. There's always been in this city like a very, very strong funk history. And so, of course, when I would learn the James Brown songs, I would, of course, learn all the bass lines first. But then I started like, man, that's pretty cool what Catfish is doing on guitar too. So then I would learn it on guitar. And then I was like, I wonder what that guitar line would sound like if I played it on bass. And so I would start kind of mimicking those. And the way I could do that was with this, the double thumb thing I'm talking about here too as well. So then I would kind of do both the bass line and the guitar line almost working in tandem with each other. That's the beautiful thing about James Brown stuff is the sax parts could be the guitar parts could be the horn part, like everything meshes to make this one rhythm. So anything's almost interchangeable in a way. Um, so yeah, so that had a lot to do with my style. I mean, that's even different. That's even I think even differentiates me from even like your traditional, like a lot of people I'm listening to, because I was kind of as much as obviously Bootsy's been a huge influence on me. He was obviously a mentor to me, gave me the name Freekbass. I wouldn't probably be talking to you right here if it wasn't Bootsy kind of gave me my start in the music business in a lot of ways. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, he gave me the name Freekbass, produced my first 2 albums. Yeah, yeah. So he really kind of set and, would have big, long, many hours of discussion about basically surviving in this crazy, topsy-turvy world of the music business that we're in. Um, so yeah, so invaluable. But as much as Bootsy influenced me musically, just as much I knew his brother when he was still here too, Catfish. And Catfish didn't have like necessarily the star thing that Bootsy had, but he was every bit as talented. And Bootsy will tell you the same thing. He was every bit as talented as Bootsy was, except he happened to be the guitar player, and he wasn't just a front guy like Bootsy was. And his lines, he wasn't just playing like minor seventh chords and stuff like that. I mean, when I went on tour back in 2009. Bootsy did this James Brown right after a couple years after James Brown passed. Bootsy put together all the original JBs and went out on this tour, and he brought out like my band. We were the opening act, and we would do the tour with them. And at the end of the night, um Bootsy would go in the audience, and the first night he like looked over at me. I'm on the side of the stage, and he like holds his bass out, and I'm like, what? And so he had me come up on stage, and I'm sitting here playing with all the original JBs, and they're kind of looking at me. I'm looking at them like, okay, how's this kid gonna do with this? And it went great. So we ended up doing it more nights after that. But the reason I say that is because like with Catfish, like his note being funky wasn't just, and that's another thing too about funk too. And this goes to your comment about notes, not just rhythm, is that Funk, yeah, of course, rhythm's a big part of it. That's obvious, but like what made a lot of Catfish's like guitar parts being up close to them so funky were his note choices. I mean, there's like flatted seconds in there. There's like really weird, like in the context by itself would sound super dissonant, but in the context of what they were doing, it just gave it enough dissonance to. That's what kind of gave it that funkiness. It wasn't just purely just the rhythm. And that was the big kind of, I guess, lesson I learned from being around him, Catfish as well as being around Bootsy. Yeah.
I agree. I think it's a marvelous dissertation about the I would call it almost the self-taught experience, being in it, seeking it out, listening to music, sitting in with people, being guided by another self-taught bassist, Bootsy Collins. The self-taught paradigm has such value, and I gotta say, the reason why I'm particularly excited to meet you here in this context is because you seem to be thus far one of the few, if maybe the only, if I can use the term slap bassist, that regards music as a part of it, the pitch, the harmony as a part of it. And I wanted to hear your thoughts in this regard because you're really making something clear. The separation of rhythm from notes isn't a concept that you seem to subscribe to. And I have to say, this is where things get a little weird when somebody says you're right or wrong. But in this case, you're right. Music is note and rhythm. And if Catfish played flat nines and stuff on the harmony, it's the pitch and the rhythm. So I think that's brilliant. I'm curious, do you tour with a band?
I do. I do a combination of things. So my main thing I do nowadays is live stream. Live stream. If you would have told me this 2 years ago, I'd have been like, "You're crazy. What are you talking about?" But literally, I'm on TikTok, and I've been all over the world with TikTok. I just got back from Mexico. I was in London a few weeks ago. I mean, a few months ago, and it's all and now I've just started YouTube a couple months, and that's really kind of taken off even quicker than I thought it would. Um, so, which obviously I'm performing and doing that. Now that's just me on there, and what I do is I'm creating beats and I'm playing with stuff, almost kind of if you took like a DJ and a bass player and kind of put them and a producer and kind of made them in one person, but you're communicating with people as you're playing. And so that's the difference between obviously if you're on stage, you're not sitting there on the microphone talking to the audience on stage as you're playing. And that's the unique thing about live streaming. I'm always joking. I'm kind of like the bass player world's answer to Liberace, type thing. So, but in terms of live, yes, I do combination of both. I'll go out similar to what I do on my live stream, but I usually go out with a live drummer. Like my drummer is his name's Rico Lewis. He toured with George Clinton and Parliament Funkadelic for about 15 years. Yeah, he's amazing. He's we Oh, he's incredible. He's a great, great dude too. Is what we just played Sunday at a thing called the Mammoth Music Festival, which was awesome. And so yeah, so I'll go out with like my kind of sample loop kind of thing with a live drummer, or I have something called Freekbass in the bump assembly, which is more your traditional horns, guitar. So I've got a couple vocalists I work with too as well. So it depends on the gig, and whether, it all depends on the gig, generally. Yeah.
Understood. I can
Yeah.
imagine you standing there and with the technology of the day, loops and MIDI and such, that you could present yourself quite capably because this is the existing formula of live performance in part. So you do that too, right? You'll go as freak bass, stand there,
Yeah.
have music, and present a show, right?
Yeah, and I think live streaming in particular, because especially, and I'm sure you've caught in little bits and pieces of this, because it's one thing to produce a 15 or 20-second Instagram reel video where everything's perfect and it sounds perfect and you're perfect and everything. And we found out some of those people that were producing those videos weren't as honest as we found out about were they really doing all that playing initially too as well. The thing about live streaming is you can't. I mean, I'm sure there are ways you can fool people, but like, I mean, I have people all the time in my live stream saying, "You're not even really playing right now," because they're hearing all the other stuff going on. And I will stop, not out of spite, just out of more fun for me. I'll literally stop every piece of music and I'll be like, what? And then just play just by myself just to show, so that's live streaming is kind of like almost pulling back the curtain a little bit too as well. And I think especially with the way I was just talking, I had a meeting with my manager right before I was on with you today. And with AI, I mean, to me, live stream in terms of, video content, especially with short-term video, I mean, AI is just done, and it's going to just keep more and more and more. It's not going away. It's just going to, and it's getting better. I mean, yeah, about 6 months ago, you could kind of tell the difference. It's getting harder and harder by the day, not by the month or not by the year, but by the day, because it keeps correcting itself. And but the one thing I think is that the live streaming space, whether it actually is playing live at a venue or live on stream like we're doing right now, that's something that, I think it's going to be many, many years for, because people want to see those mistakes sometimes and they want to see the flaws and all the stuff. And I think that's something that's going to be around that you can't duplicate through AI yet. We'll see, who knows 5 years from now, but right now I think we're okay. Yeah.
The AI phenomenon is simply a sign of evolution in music. And
Yeah.
I think I'd heard that, I mean, I practice, speaking for me, to vary every approach that I do as much as possible, trying to emulate pianists and like Keith Jarrett, who I don't know if
Yeah.
he repeated two, phrases in his life. I don't know if I have that, but I'm seeking it. And in AI, if it learns to emulate me and become like this, I'll have to accept it and just simply say to people that are interested that I'll do it on stage or when I provide a record, I'll give them the real human communicated approach to music. And I
Yeah.
don't know if AI can ever replace or even equally influence a listening audience. So I'm not fearful of AI.
Oh, I'm not either. No, yeah. I think what the human element, the soul element's never going to go. There's not going to, there's AI is not going to create a Sly Stone or a Johnny Cash or a Keith Jarrett or whatever artist you want to say on that level. It's just not going to happen. Yeah, it can replicate those. It can make things sound like that, but it's not going to have the soul. The soul is not going to be there. No, I agree. Yeah.
Humanity. Well, listen, this was a wonderful chat. I admire your musicality and I admire your focus on the self to create. As I had mentioned before, one of the things that attracted me right away to you, you said you were kind. You said I defended you. I did because online comments sometimes miss the point entirely. Your
Yeah.
focus on the self-induced examination of music and the slap and the technical pursuits, I agree with it, and I think you were right, and I think that uh, I congratulate you for this. And I
Oh.
a wonderful chat with you. I want to read some stuff that pertains to you for people that want to find out more about Freekbass. Oh, by the way, before I go into this, would you review the Jimmy Fallon story? Because quite frankly, I'm not sure I know it myself, and
Right.
who might not know it, you were on it or he called your name. Tell us the story, the Jimmy Fallon.
Well, we're still kind of on the little, last week was absolutely insane. It's still kind of out there in the ether, has calmed down a little bit. So basically, first off, the way that it happened, which is, obviously I kind of found out after the fact. So last year I was on I was part of this thing where I became one of the top 10 creators in the TikTok community. So TikTok live streaming community. So TikTok, I think they took the top five and they put them on Times Square for a week to advertise a big event that they were doing. So I was on time, which was that's even bizarro world to me. But like, so they on the Nasdaq, there were five different billboards, ran for a week. Dingwall was very happy because I'm a Dingwall player. So not only was I on Times Square, the big Dingwall base was too. So that I took care of my endorsement duties there, I guess you could say, really quickly. Um, yes, but and they're a great company anyway, so it was awesome. But so that happened first, and because of that, there's a magazine called Cincinnati Magazine wanted to do a story about the Times Square thing. So they did the story on that, and then I guess someone in Northern Ohio got the Cincinnati Magazine thing and sent it to Kimmel. I mean, excuse me, to Fallon, to Fallon's staff or whoever it was, and he has a segment that this people look like me. So about 11:40 last Monday night, 11:45. I had no clue ahead of time, nothing. People keep asking me that zero. About 11:45 p.m. Eastern time, people started DMing me and leaving these messages. Turn on your TV, blah blah blah. You're on Jimmy Fallon. And I thought it was like, okay, he's probably got a bass. He's probably wearing like a fuzzy bow, something funny, like, and they oh, he kind of looks like you or something like that. Had no idea, but he not only dressed like me, but wore whoever his stylist was, they got the exact same jacket I wore and this same I mean, everything. And the cool part was the visual part was obviously like overwhelming, but the Roots, who I played a few different festival, who are his house band, obviously Questlove and all the Roots, they started kind of creating this freak bass chant thing as he was doing the whole thing. So for me as a musician, that was the part that I was like, this is so cool. The Roots are there, like going freak bass like that. And of course I sampled it and used it in a song. Yeah, so the whole thing, and then of course, then like Tuesday, like I had to turn the notifications off my phone. It was just like absolutely insane. And my friend, I don't know, you might have even worked with him before, Jeff, Kenny Aronoff, who's a drummer. He's played with everybody. I had done a thing with him at Sweetwater Music the weekend before for Guitar Fest, and he sent me a really nice voicemail. He's like, he said, you got the best of both worlds. You got to be on the Tonight Show, and you didn't have to fly there to do it. But yeah, it was the weirdest experience, the most random strangest experience. Like, I'm not even sure how all the things fit behind the scenes, but I just, life is a trip. That's all I have to say. Yeah.
I used to make a silly joke, which is life's a bitch, and then you live 20 more years.
Yeah, right. That's the good. It's so true.
People can find you at freakbass.com. They can find you on Instagram at Freekbass. The YouTube channel is called Freekbass. There is a Freekbass artist page on Facebook, X, and Twitter. Am I right about this? At
All,
Freekbass. Did I get that right?
all the above. Yes. Yeah. And
And
the one thing I want to mention real quick is the unique spelling, as you found out before we started this interview. It's not spelled traditionally. We use two E's. So Freekbass. Yes. Yeah.
Freekbass. So,
Mm.
ladies and gentlemen, Freekbass. Thank you very much, my good sir. And I
Th-
ought to share. Freekbass was kind. He interviewed me when my Jack Bruce record came out.
Yeah. Yes.
I want to thank you for this, and maybe I'll be in touch when the new one comes out. I'd love to continue a relationship, and
Yes.
thank you very much for your time, man. It was great.